In this video, we'll talk about how it's getting harder and harder to track how people engage with your brand or your product. That is, typically people create a website and they want to know how people come to that website. But because of the amount of private sharing that's going on, the word of mouth, and various other factors, it's getting harder and harder to detect where that traffic is coming from. So we're just going to acknowledge that that issue exists. We're going to talk about what you could do about it in terms of communicating with your audience in a different way, as well as improving your ways to measure where people are coming from along the sales path. So in the previous video, we talked about why people use different methods of communication in terms of social media posts, messaging, text messaging, emailing, some of the sort of psychological motivations for using different ones, and what it means when you're sharing information publicly to everybody versus privately to a group. Now I want to talk about how private sharing of information is increasing, and people are always going to be motivated to share information privately. And you've got Google Chrome getting rid of third-party cookies. You've got people using apps instead of browsers, and all these factors that make it harder and harder to track what people are doing online. And so the notion of people behaving online in a way that you can't measure is called dark social. And this includes private messaging apps like on Facebook, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Twitter, forums, email, SMS, text, or encrypted channels like WhatsApp and Telegram. And the frequency in which people are sharing information in ways that can't be measured has led to certain articles that you'll see popping up. For example, the article from The Drum, which I'll link to below, is titled "Uncertainty is the New Digital Advertising Reality." This notion that we have to get used to uncertainty and the fact that we can't measure everything. So in the article, they say, fully deterministic measurement is dead and all your traditional reports are even more irrelevant every day. And this reflects the fact that it was estimated that 84% of social sharing traffic happens in emails and texts and private messaging. So the majority of it is actually happening where it can't be measured. So what should marketers do about this? What can marketers do? One thing they could do is they could go in and communicate to their audience through those same dark social channels. So they could use Facebook or LinkedIn, Snapchat, or Twitter messaging to connect with potential customers. And this is something that very few companies are doing. And there's an article I'll link to below by Jeff Nicholson, where he kind of points this out in an interesting way, where he decided to go out and take some of his favorite brands, and on Facebook Messenger and on Twitter, he messaged them and to see if they would respond. And he found that these brands that he was really into were really bad about getting back to him through these means. But there's a number of examples of people and brands who are using these methods to build connections with their audience. One of the interesting ones is in the hip hop and rap community. Rylan Leslie created this app called the Superphone, which organizes the text messages of all of his fans. And so it keeps track of data, it keeps track of information on all of his fans, and it basically is used as a personal relationship management tool for all of the fans, right? So the goal, if you're going to connect with people over these private, more personal platforms, is that you need a way to manage it, and you need to make sure that you could scale that. And that's what the Superphone does. Gary Vaynerchuk has his phone number printed on his t-shirt, and he asks fans to text him, and they voluntarily do it. In fact, they enthusiastically give him their phone number. Other entrepreneurs like Daniel DiPiazza is putting his phone number front and center and asking people questions and asking them to answer those questions by sending him a text message. Now, I'll link to a talk below where Joe Buzzard talks about this on YouTube, where he gives an example with Hellmann's mayonnaise. And what they did is they asked the people for their phone numbers, and they said that you could take a photo of what you have in the fridge and send them that photo, and they'll give you a recipe of what you could cook with mayo with what you have in your fridge. So they're just recognizing a problem that people have and allowing them to communicate with them through text to help solve that problem. And then you've got Twitter tweets talking about how much people are using private group texts and how useful they are. So it's happening. People are communicating that way, and companies are starting to appreciate that they can communicate with others through that channel as well. But there's an important consideration, because if you're communicating to people through a more personal message, then you have to be more personal. You have to be sort of more intimate and provide value to your customers. And you want to engage people more. And so marketers need to appreciate that and understand that. They need to think of it more as a conversation and less as direct selling. And so this potential shift that we're seeing, where people are communicating that way and where companies and brands are beginning to communicate with their fans or their customers that way, can actually have positive benefits in terms of creating more meaningful conversations between the brands and their customers. So finally, and I'll put some links to this below as well, in addition to companies and brands using private messaging and email and text messaging to communicate with their audiences, there's also ways that they can try to measure and understand the conversations that are going on in dark social. So if they get people to communicate through phone, they can use different phone numbers and track where the different phone numbers come from, for example. In Google Analytics, you can set up a segment to try to filter traffic that's most likely coming from dark social, so you can understand at least how much traffic you're getting that you can't understand where it's coming from. And then there's dark social tracking tools like Add This, Share This, and Get Social. And I'll put a link to those below. So in this video, we talked about how you can't measure a lot of people's behavior online, because many people try to avoid public social media platforms, and they try to communicate with a more isolated, intimate group through more private ways of communicating, like text messaging and emailing and private messenger. So companies need to understand this. They need to understand how they can communicate with their audience through these same channels, and they need to understand ways that they can keep track of how their audience is driven to their homepage in this landscape. So thanks for checking out this video. We're posting regularly on our psychological ideas and how that relates to marketing. So hit the subscribe and the bell if you want to be notified of our posts. Let us know in the comments what you think about this notion of dark social. And hit the like button if you like this. Hit the share if you share. Thanks for checking this out.